Hi, True Crime fans. This is Patti Lee, the dyslexic detective at the True Crime Grapevine, and I'm going to break down for you the fifth case. Our fifth case today is the Petito civil case against the Laundries. Today, so before we get into it, I have a red sangria. Sangria is sort of tropical and summery, and it reminds me of Florida. And this one says that it is fun and fruity, sparkling, and sparkling and fun reminds me of Gabby Petito. So here's to Gabby and her memory, and for some justice for her family, the Petito and Schmidt family. Oh, it's good. Ooh, I like that. Way better than that nasty mom water with nasty Lori. Left a bad taste in my mouth like Lori Vallow leaves in my mouth. All right, so case 5. Just an update on this lawsuit. So you might remember the whole world was sort of captivated by this beautiful girl named Gabby Petito who had gone missing, and her sort of odd boyfriend who returned home with Gabby's van. They had been going like a long trip out west, from starting in New York, traveling all the way out west. They had done it the year before. It was during COVID. She was interested in the van life. So she was sort of documenting both of these trips. And so this was the second one. And so he returned home September 1st in the van, which was Gabby's van, without Gabby. So, right, like big warning signs should have been going off in everybody's head. That was September 1st. By September 6th, he and his family were on a little vacation to Fort DeSoto where they had, s'mores around a fire and camped out, as one does. And by the 11th, Gabby's mom had been going insane, Ms. Schmidt, Nicole Schmidt, because her baby had not gotten in touch with her, and she got some weird text about there's no cell coverage in Yosemite, but they weren't in Yosemite. The last she knew, they were in Wyoming, and this made no sense, and she couldn't get a hold of her. And so this is the crux of this civil suit, and she couldn't get a hold of Brian's family because they had blocked her number and blocked her on Facebook. So Gabby had been living and was engaged to Brian, and Gabby's father, Joe Petito, lived also in Florida, and the Schmidts lived where everybody had originally come from. Like, Brian met Gabby in high school in like Long Island area in New York, but she had gotten to know him, and they were living together I think they had been living together in a condo that Brian's parents paid for, if I'm correct. And then they started doing this van life during COVID, and had put some of their stuff into storage, and Joe, her father, had helped purchase this van so they could do this van life thing, get out into the world. What everybody didn't know was a couple things going on behind the scenes. One, which is rarely talked about but was mentioned a few times by Gabby's friend Rose, was that Brian was hearing voices, and that sometimes Gabby would come stay with her at night and saying that Brian was out of sorts, and the voices wouldn't let him sleep. If you know anything about psychology, as I told you before, I know about typical psychology, but along with typical, when it becomes atypical, I'm not a specialist in that, but I can tell you what isn't typical and signs of atypicalness. And at the end of adolescence and in early young adulthood is the time when schizophrenia is the time when it appears. I am not able to diagnose Brian. Brian is no longer with us. That's a whole other story about there was a big manhunt for him. His family had not been quite truthful about the timeline. They forgot when he left the house. He was found weeks later. He was found with a gunshot, and it appeared that he didn't even get out his tent. Supposedly he had run away. So somehow from their, the Laundrie's vacation, while Gabby was lying dead somewhere, they went on vacation. And after that vacation on the 8th, apparently somehow Brian got to this park, and his parents said it was a different park, and they didn't know anything, but he had his camping equipment, but he never unfurled it, and he was unalived by a gun, but it wasn't with the right hand. He's right-handed, and it was on, like, it would have been left-handed shot. The whole thing has lots of questions left over it, and there was a notebook found in a dry bag. The weirdest thing was that after there'd been like a month search, somehow the Laundries said, oh, we're gonna look one more time. They walked right into the park and found the dry bag, and nearby was his body. Do the math. Just speculation on my part, but wow, they should have been playing the lottery, because that is one crazy lucky thing to just out of, like, you know, FBI, Florida, nobody can find the remains, and they just like, oh, here they are. No love lost between myself and the dirty laundries, as some people call them. Allegedly, speculation, we don't know. They could be the nicest people. To Gabby and justice. All right, so the lawsuit was a civil lawsuit. So after all this other stuff was over and Brian was no longer found, and the FBI said it looks like he was the only suspect in Gabby's demise out in Wyoming, because there was DV involved. It's pretty clear who did what, right? So the Petito and Schmitz had filed in March a lawsuit, but it wasn't written probably just exactly how it had to be stated. So they were allowed to amend it. They amended it. JB at WFLA, hey, shout out JB, wrote an article that I read, and it said that the lawsuit was amended in 6 specific ways. So, as I said, so they specifically state that the Laundries knew that Gabby was dead and Brian was the one who did it, and they knew where she was. And this was all why the police were searching in that timeline. They cite that the Laundrie statement on September 14th, and Gabby wasn't found until the 19th. They stated that the Laundries' actions were beyond outrageous, and when they said, so the Laundrie said, they had a statement on the 14th that said, it is our hope that Gabby will be found and reunited with her parents. Like, no, you know that she's not going to be found well. Like, they said specifically, would they say that she would be found, that the search will be successful and that she will be reunited with her family, when they knew that she was already been unalived. Law enforcement, they had said that the family hadn't spoke with like the Petitos or anybody, and they included law enforcement. That was taken out because apparently they did speak with law enforcement, maybe, although they didn't tell them what they needed to. But the fact that they went radio silence with the family and blocked them on a number of things. In Section 31, they specified that the Laundries, and this is what I think is important, that the Laundries were aware of the pain and suffering, and they knew they could prevent additional mental suffering and anguish by telling Gabby's status, like saying they knew that she wasn't alive any longer, and the location, so that they didn't otherwise, and put that together with this thing of their hope for a happy ending and a reunion. So basically, they were purposefully and wantonly, without any regard for the Petito Schmidt family, providing false information to the public and everybody listening, making it sound as if they knew nothing. They could have prevented this. The fifth change was, okay, so the fifth change has 5 different parts to it. The allegation of failing to inform Gabby's family that she was deceased. The failing to inform her parents of the location. Taking, I don't know how, this is like part of the wanton disregard. Taking a family vacation knowing that everybody, including her parents, were looking for her. I mean, it's the parents' mental anguish and suffering that they are claiming that the Laundries did. So it's based on them. So basically not letting them, like going off and having fun and not even knowing, like, and doing, not saying anything to her parents when they did know. Then blocking access to their phones and Facebook, and then issuing that statement of hope. So, and then the sixth modification or amendment to the civil lawsuit was the separation of counts between Chris and Roberta. So now, like, each count of causing mental anguish and what is it? The phrase is, hold on. The legal phrase in Florida is, it's damages for pain and suffering, emotional distress, leading to the neglect or recklessness in some way, the actions that lead to emotional distress. And so, count 1 and 2 is Joseph Petito against the Laundries. 1 is like against Christopher Laundrie, the father, and the second one is against Roberta Laundrie. And then counts 3 and 4 are Nicole Schmidt versus Christopher Laundrie, the father, and Roberta Laundrie, the mother. And in Florida, so there is the civil law does include like a thing about pain and causing pain and suffering, and you have to show that the person neglected or was reckless in some way, and that their actions led to your emotional distress. So this was more targeted, more specific about who and what. And if it goes, it will be August 14th. There's a date on the calendar. So if the judge accepts this amended civil lawsuit complaint. And so if you listen to Emily Baker, she'll tell you the complaint in a civil lawsuit, it's all, what does she call it? Allegations and shade. I mean, it is only what the people suing think. It's not supposed to be facts. It is definitely allegations and shade. But previously, the complaint had just said basically they were horrible to, like, outrageous of our feelings and blah blah. It wasn't as specific. There wasn't specificity. This, I think, is much